Hi everyone, it's MrMostDaysOff from the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. I want to say thank you so much for tuning into our podcast and also let you know of 3 additional ways you can help out the show. First, you can find and buy our merchandise at tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. You can also support our sponsors popthreads.com for all your other t-shirt needs and use our discount code Simpsons at checkout. And finally, you can find us on patreon.com. Thank you again so much for listening to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show, and please enjoy this week's podcast. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by 2 dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as MrMostDaysOff, and today we are off to the land down under. And we have a friend along for the journey with us, but before we get to him, joining me as always, the bullfrog to this show that just invaded and won't go away. It's your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
Ribbit. I am doing great. It's a fine day to be a Simpsons fan, especially on this show. We have a whole lot of fun scheduled today. And as always, when we have a guest, I don't want to waste any time rambling like my name is Miles. I will throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the Rand McNally. It is Miles.
I hear the hamburgers eat people there. So, we are talking about Bart Vs Australia, of course, today. And while talking about an Australian episode of The Simpsons, we figured we might as well get somebody from the source. So we have Paul from Perth, Australia, the host of the Countdown podcast. Welcome to the show, Paul. How are you today?
Very, very well. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Miles. Thank you so much, Richie. It's a pleasure to be here to talk, well, one of the most culturally sensitive episodes of television that's ever been produced.
That is what The Simpsons is known for. And may I say, sir, that we really appreciate what you're going to do for our female listeners with that accent of yours, because I'm pretty sure they just tripled from 1 to 3. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I've been told that there's an accent thing that works in the States, but unfortunately, the only time I visited your fair country, I went with my then girlfriend, and as a result, I think it's all a load of crap.
Ah, yes, yeah. Do you still have said girlfriend?
No, we parted ways many years ago. I have a new girlfriend now, and I think she would be very happy to come with me to the States, but not let me go by myself.
I was about to say, man, you need to time it right so when you're in between things, you can come back and visit, and you'll just absolutely slay over here, guaranteed.
That would be so awesome, and thank you very much.
So, Paul, you host the Countdown podcast, which is a lot of fun. You and your co-host Wayne go through each week, and it's always a movie list and with a different sort of twist. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about the podcast, as I'm sure you can do it in a much better way than I can.
Well, as you mentioned, my co-host Wayne has pretty much come up with a new way of summarizing the show. It's kind of like when you love movies and, in brackets, TV, but also love being an arsehole to your best friend. So that's pretty much the precept or the principle in which the show is built, in which we count down a list from 10 to 1 and then take the piss out of each other's list, trying to undermine each other's efforts whilst also recognizing when that effort is pretty quality. And we review new movies, but we do TV sometimes, not as much as the name of our podcast, the Countdown Movie and TV Reviews, might indicate, but we are getting around to it a little bit more often these days, and we hope to make it a more regular part of the show. And as a old school Simpsons fan, I'm so honored to be here to discuss an old school Simpsons episode, and I know my co-host Wayne is going to be insanely jealous because he would have a lot to say about this particular episode, especially.
Well, what a bonus then that you not only get to come and talk about the show here with us, but you get to rub it in your co-host's face, which is really the best part of podcasting, if you're being real.
It's like you guys tap into our same zeitgeist. It's amazing.
I was going to say, it sounds like you guys have such a great rapport. Well, you do have a great rapport with each other, but it sounds like you can see and feel the friendship between you guys, even while you're swearing at each other, which I really appreciate. I wish I had more opportunity to swear at fucking Miles. But, things happen.
I wish we could get away with saying the C word as much as you blokes do, because I get happy every time I hear it, and over here it just instantly would be like, and we're canceled.
Yeah, look, there is a reason I think we're not bigger than we might be, and it's, apart from that we have no talent, it's that my co-host in particular loves to use that particular word, and therefore he drags me into it, kicking and screaming against my better nature.
Well, speaking of the kicking and screaming, I really enjoy when you force him to watch horror movies. I just listened, it wasn't too long ago, you had done a review on Hereditary,
Yes.
Which was a great flick. I really enjoyed that movie a lot.
Too.
And I was going to say, I know we had that in common, but he apparently just does not care for the horror genre, even a little bit.
No, it's quite hilarious. And it's funny you say that, Miles, because our better downloaded episodes tend to be the horror ones where he is squirming in his brown saturated jocks. So it's just great as far as I'm concerned.
That's wonderful.
I like that we have the fine wine of the Countdown podcast with us today. I mean, I hear Wayne go a little bit off the handle sometimes, even though I'm in his ballpark a little bit on the horror movie stuff. It's not that I don't enjoy horror movies. I just feel like most of the time you can see what's coming, and there's only certain ones that really grab my attention a little bit. But I listened to your guys' review of Ant-Man, and I have a bone to pick with you in that one. I will back Wayne up on that. I thoroughly enjoyed Ant-Man and the Wasp. It was just a whole lot of fun for me. But you did have some good points on it. I will give you that.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to our show. And as I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted with your listeners, you guys are just nailing it with The Simpsons. Congratulations on 100 episodes. I guess a couple of weeks back by the time this comes out. I just listened to that today, and you just obviously built up such a respectful rapport with so many of your guests. It's so amazing.
Well, thank you so much. We had a lot of fun with the 100th episode. It was a little bit different than our normal fare that we do here each week, but that was a really good time. Can't wait till we get to 200 so we can do something silly again. Or maybe we'll just cheat and pick a random number.
And have we done the maths on this? So given that you are 1/6 of the way through the number of Simpsons episodes, if you continue at 52 episodes per year, how long does your podcast last for before you catch The Simpsons?
We've looked into it a couple times. The problem is sometimes we do end up splitting episodes. Like an episode will go long, we'll have a good conversation, and things will split out. So we can't precisely pinpoint it, but it's somewhere around 7.5 years. If The Simpsons keep going and we keep going at the same pace, we'll actually catch the show, and then this would become a weekly review of the most current episode that releases on Sundays still on Fox here in the States.
So 375, give or take, episodes. That's a lot of best darn diddly to look forward to.
Yeah, we have source material for years. That's definitely not going to be an issue. It's why we chose The Simpsons over, say, Futurama or South Park, because one, we grew up on it, and two, we knew it was never going away.
Yeah, I think you're pretty safe.
And also, I would like to say that Miles himself is a continuing source of inspiration for me. So.
Well played, sir.
Well played, sir.
Oh!
So, Paul, you mentioned that you're an old school Simpsons fan. Let's talk a little bit about that. When did you start watching the show? And special question just for you. Do you remember the first time you watched Bart Vs Australia, the episode we're going to talk about here today?
Only insofar... Look, I'll go backwards. The second question first. Only insofar as it made a bit of a wave down here. Like, if you go back that far in time, there was no internet. Oh, hey, hold on, listeners. Just bear with me here.
What?
Okay. There was no such thing as podcast. There was no such thing as immediate connection about anything. And the gag in the film, in the TV show, which I'm sure we will get to, is actually, no, that was a deleted scene. Did you guys see deleted scenes this episode? Because I watched those as well.
On the DVD, I caught those.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I think I know which one you're about to talk about. But go right ahead.
And Bart makes a reference in the Australian Parliament, like, now go back to watching your TV shows from 10 years ago or something along those lines. And that was absolutely the case. All the way up until the turn of the millennium and when the internet was sort of taking hold, we here in Australia had to wait sometimes 9, 12, even 18 months before a TV show which had aired on your shores would sluggishly make its way across the ocean to us. So
you just defined what would be considered torture to most millennials these days. They want their Netflix drops with everything.
It's like waiting for Game of Thrones.
Yeah, look, I have a daughter who's 5 years old. She's never going to understand that you used to have to wait for shit. So she just goes, I want to watch this movie, and she goes onto Netflix, and there it magically is. And there's a little part of me that dies inside every time she does that, because she's never going to understand how you have to wait for something great or cool or amazing other than the ability to drink.
Well, in that whole, true, very true. With those giant ass beers you guys have over there too, she could probably go swimming in one at this point.
It's pretty big.
But yeah, to your point too, also the concept of, I know FOMO or fear of missing out is like a big thing, a craze people love to talk about right now, is this psychological thing that we all go through. But there was a much bigger chance, at least if you were a pop culture junkie, that you legit would miss out on something, because if you did not catch it when it aired, you didn't necessarily have the ability to watch it unless you happened to catch a rerun down the road. So we've talked about on this podcast a lot the idea that Richie and I both, and maybe you were in the same boat, we would binge watch The Simpsons. I mean, like, there were times that I would watch the same episode because it would happen to play on like a satellite East Coast showing and then like a West Coast showing. So I'd literally watch the same episode twice in one day. And people nowadays, people younger than me are very confused by that. They're like, well, why would you just watch it back to back? And it's like, because I didn't know the next time I would have the opportunity to watch that episode. It might not come for a while.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it was just the fact that we're delayed to get it here as well. And not that it's the same TV show, because obviously Simpsons spoilers not as big deal, but some of the other TV shows that were contingent on an end of season cliffhanger, as the show was playing the cliffhanger or the end of season here, we would be hearing news via media outlets that was telling us what the answer to the cliffhanger was.
Oh no. That's awful.
Like, it just robbed it of its whole power. And there's an infamous
Maggie
example.
shot Mr. Burns.
Yeah, well, kind of. Like, I don't remember that one specifically, but I certainly remember, like, Buffy's mum dying in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That happened in our kind of report on our media 6 months before we ever got to see the episode. It's crazy to consider, but yeah.
And newscasters in Australia don't even believe in announcing spoiler alerts, huh?
Well, not back those days.
I know. I never knew that happened.
So I don't remember Bart vs Australia specifically watching it. I remember the furor in our media, which was a lot of reviewers saying how disrespectful it was and how dare the Simpsons, and I thought they were our friends. And there are so many funny gags in this episode which just reference just how much a little brother Australia is to the United States and how much we want to be like you.
Wow. You're picking the wrong sibling to look up to, my friend.
Back in the mid-90s, I guess, it literally was the mid-90s, 1995. It was probably a little bit more so to some degree, and obviously world events have changed in the last 23 years. Not to say that the United States is not the superpower that it is, and we are the little small fry, 24 million populated island, which everybody just says, oh, you too, because that is still the same.
Well, the United States is absolutely the number one country in the world if we're ranking it on self-confidence. There's no doubt that we have a beat there. But anyway, let's back up just a little bit and talk about your connection early on watching the show. Tell me some of your earliest memories of watching The Simpsons. And also, I listened enough to your podcast that I feel like there might be some influence in general on your guys' sense of humor, and I would like to hear if you have anything to say about that as well.
Oh, for sure. Like, Wayne and I are the same age, and not to date ourselves specifically, but we were in high school and later high school when The Simpsons started, so it was something that people would come to school and talk about. Like, here's this crazy kind of adult humored TV show, which nothing had existed like it in our generation since probably the Flintstones. And the Flintstones is like the most lame version of The Simpsons ever. So it's kind of hard to reconcile those two, but that was the closest comparison that we had. So it kind of blew us all away. And I think it was the Tracy Ullman show where it kind of started. And yeah, so we got those little snippets, and then it blew up into its own TV show. And by the time this season rolls around, it was so entrenched in our culture. Like, everybody watched this show. everybody could quote from it, especially, I would say, season 3 on. It kind of really hit its stride for us in Australia. And so when they said, season 6, there's going to be an Australian episode where we send The Simpsons to Australia, there was rejoicing in our country. There were fans were like up in arms. It's kind of hard.
There's
I guess
parades
if Harry
and
Potter,
balloons.
yeah, if Harry Potter came to the United States and set up shop in, I don't know, Church and Scientology or whatever else, there would be the equal amount of hurraying and hurrahing, I reckon, in this particular day and age. So,
oh yeah, if that happened, I'd definitely be all about praising Xenu or whoever.
your thetans level would rise
That's
exponentially.
Exactly right, yeah. I'm off the E-meter.
So, yeah, and indeed, like, to this day, I have friends that have moved around the world. I've got a particular friend lives in Nottingham in the UK. He's a police officer, and he will still quote to me from this era of The Simpsons. He will still quote to me quotes like, yeah, we had to chase a guy into whatever forest or whatever plains, but thankfully I was as sure-footed as a mountain goat. You know, just stuff like that. And it really did permeate our particular subculture, our particular group's humor, and we can still make quotes from it and still look at each other and laugh. In fact, this is a no lie at all. At work the other day, with a guy that I've only known for 18 months, so we've moved on a long, long time, somebody mentioned the word chowder.
Chowder!
About, yeah.
Say it right,
and I did
Frenchie.
exactly that. Muttered it on the other side of the room, and this guy turned to me and said, "You're a Simpsons fan, huh?" That is how uniting this particular show is, and how much it's still, to this day, the fans, like myself, obviously like you two guys as well, can still just make a random reference and people respond.
I think it's so great when you do that in a public place, like a bar. Maybe a bar's too loud, but a public setting where there's a large group of people and you drop a Simpsons reference and you can literally look around the room and you'll see certain people's ears kind of point up a little bit. And like they almost start salivating because they just get so excited. It's like a Pavlovian response to any time you quote The Simpsons. 100% agree with you on that. We do have a pretty awesome episode to talk about today. Obviously, it's Bart vs. Australia, which originally aired on February 19th, 1995. Now, that was here in the United States. It didn't air until probably February 96.
Probably more like January 31st, 2012 here in Australia, but yes.
Yeah, hey, whenever this does air there, you're really going to enjoy it, I think. So keep on the lookout for that. But this one had the chalk gag, the fairly, edgy chalk gag, I'll say, of "I will not hang donuts on my person." Interesting. And also the couch gag on this one was a repeat, but one that I'm very fond of, where the Simpsons swim through their carpet as if it's water, and they hop out, shake off, and watch the show as usual. We open up with Bart and Lisa kneeling on either side of the sink, and they're having their toothpaste and their shampoo race each other down the drain. Bart gets upset, I guess I'll say, as he declares, "No fair! You only won because you had the inside track. If the water is spinning the other way..."
It never spins the other way. In the Northern Hemisphere, water always drains counterclockwise. It's called the Coriolis effect. I said that completely wrong.
I think it was Coriolis there, Lisa.
Coriolis effect, yeah.
Which, right away, we already have a fun fact from IMDb as...
It is the Coriolis effect. Oh.
This is actually not the Coriolis or the Coriolis effect. It's neither of them. This is actually now something that is very widely a misconception because people trust Lisa so much. So many people believe this fact to be true. But the truth of the matter is toilet bowls, sinks, and other likewise small amounts of water like that would not actually be large enough to be affected by this effect, which is actually something that affects things like weather patterns. And it's all due to the way the Earth is on its tilt, on its axis. So this is a commonly misunderstood fact, and I think it's largely to do with The Simpsons, which I think is just fantastic. That because Lisa says it, everybody's like, oh, it must be true.
Agreed, 100%. I think Mythbusters did a whole episode, or at least a segment or a skit dedicated to it, and they disproved it. So you're right. Lisa knows all.
Yeah, at least as a society, we feel she does. That's so fun.
I'm not going to lie. Because of this episode, there are numerous times that I went and flushed my toilet, and I don't remember what happened to any of those times.
Did you also put your hands in the toilet, Richie, and try to make it spin the other way?
Come on, Richie, use a plunger.
I had to get my army guys out of there somehow.
Oh, wow. I really love Bart's response here just because it kind of shows off that 90s dude he presented so well, where he's like, no way, water doesn't obey your rules. It goes where it wants, like me, babe. I love that so much. I also love that he immediately starts testing the theory by running the water and flushing the toilets repeatedly. And we see Homer in the shower, and oh my god, this is the most miserable thing to experience, and to have it happen over and over and over again like this. He's singing and having a good time until he's suddenly assaulted with burst of ice cold water, followed by insanely hot water, and he just screams back and forth both ways. It's absolutely hilarious.
Not to mention Bart's quote, faithful toilet. You'll prove me right. That's hilarious. Faithful. What? When has the toilet proved you right before, Bart? I like that implication.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think it's ever proved him wrong, so.
I think it just shows how close they are and how frequently he's in there.
Fair.
Lisa starts to try to explain to Bart what's going on, and she immediately starts by well, first of all, have you even opened your globe? And we see it still wrapped up from Grandpa. She points to the southern hemisphere and tries to explain this concept by saying,
southern hemisphere?
Well, what the hell's an equator, too? I love that.
This line here.
So great. So Bart is absolutely just not having it, and he decides he's going to actually start calling all these countries in the southern hemisphere to try to get an answer. We see him grab the phone book, and he looks up how to internationally dial first, which is great. And I think he punches in about 30-something numbers here as he's dialing, which is only a slight exaggeration. One other quick note from IMDb here, actually, as Bart is dialing, the tone that we hear is actually the opening theme for National Geographic documentaries. Little fun fact.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the crazy thing.
Clever writers.
That's what I was going to say. The Simpsons, man, the writers there, they always put these like fun little jokes that I never would have caught that on my own, but I happened to be reading online and somebody pointed it out, and it's just there's probably still jokes in some of these episodes that still haven't quite been caught by anybody. They'll pop out one day. Cool. It's really damn cool, actually. It's like you're in like it's almost like you're in like some sort of like club or membership whenever you're Simpsons fans, where you get to go and revisit these things and be like, oh, did you catch this? And every once in a while you're like, what? Oh my god. Yeah.
Chowder.
Exactly.
Did you say club?
So we see Bart start to make his rounds. It's first, I think he calls the pole, Antarctica. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and he just says southern hemisphere, like not very specific, but you know.
Can you check which way your toilet drains? Oh, all right. Yeah, perfect.
Of course, this is not the greatest place to call for this response because the toilet bowl is completely frozen solid, not spinning either direction.
Yeah, so they double down the joke by having the guy come in with his Sports Illustrated magazine. He's like, not again.
That's great. So Bart gives another country a try. I think this time it might be Argentina. And he basically is having it translated to the El Presidente, which he says, which way does the water in your toilet run? Unfortunately, it didn't quite make the correct translation.
Oh, I don't know how to say that in Spanish.
Well, it comes out as "Ay caramba!" Then the rebels will soon take the capital. I must flee.
Oh no, I meant the aide actually says the tide is turning in Espanol, and I don't remember how to say that, so I apologize to our listeners.
What a bad Texan.
I know.
Do you speak enough Spanish to get by, Richie?
No.
No, senor. I've tried to learn Spanish a few times and really should personally, but it I never dedicate myself to it enough. I'll just move to Mexico for a month. That should work.
That'll do it.
Yeah, definitely. Bart's starting to get a little bit frustrated that he cannot get a straight answer out of this crazy hemisphere. So he gives another number a try. And we see, of all people, somewhere in South America, Adolf Hitler answers the phone.
Ein Minuten.
He starts screaming out. He's getting kind of frustrated. And I love that somebody rides by and is just like, Buenos noches, mein Führer.
Ja, ja.
So apparently, according to, again, IMDb on this is a joke at the concept that after World War II, a lot of Nazis apparently fled to South America, and there was even conspiracies that Adolf Hitler was one of them, and he had somehow not been killed
Faked
and
his
snuck
death.
away. Yeah, pretty unsubstantial evidence to those circumstances, but that is the rumor that was put out there, and that's what this is joking at.
Ja, ja.
I don't know why this one cracks me up so much, but there's a very quick bit where we see a man sitting on his roof surrounded by lava. A payphone comes by, which is actually something that used to be a way to communicate back in the 90s. And this man grabs the telephone off the receiver as it's going by, but unfortunately it yanks him straight into the molten lava.
Sorry, I apologize for everyone who's been burnt by molten lava.
Yeah, that's seriously, man. Like, we need to be a little bit sensitive on this program.
That's right.
I think we should do a PSA for falling into lava.
That's probably appropriate.
Always go from couch to chair.
Yeah.
Sometimes
When
you can
the
actually
floor
burn
is
the chairs
lava.
together.
Yeah, if the floor is lava, stay off it.
The floor is always lava, sir. That's like an ongoing game in my house. I just walk from place to place.
Likewise, mine.
It's a good rule. And you know what? If we ever do have to survive in a volcanic situation, we'll have been practicing our whole lives.
5 seconds.
We're doing it
that's
like
how
the
long.
Community episode.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. So Lisa actually finds out that Bart's been calling all these people, and she's very quick to point out that that's a very bad idea because international calls are very expensive. Bart obviously is not going to rack up the phone bill any further. He calls collect all the way to Australia, where we see a young boy is hesitant to answer the call until one Dr. Bart Simpson of the International Drainage Commission declares it's an emergency.
Willikers!
Good old Tobias.
Bart gets this young Tobias, all full of Willikers, to go and check his toilet, and he's so frustrated when he comes back to report that Lisa was, of course, correct, that he says, well, why don't you go and check with your neighbors? And this is one of our first great bits, taking a little poke at Australia, because we see Tobias run out his front door, grab a bike, and just drive out into the horizon, where we see nothing but the outback for miles to come.
And if I can jump in, there's a bit where when the phone call's happening, there's a koala climbing the telephone pole who reaches out and touches the transistor box, gets zapped, and reaches back out and touches it again, which I think is a callback to an earlier episode when Bart keeps touching the, like, is he dumber than a mouse or a rat?
Oh,
when
wow.
Lisa's doing that experiment. So something that always stuck with me.
That's an awesome observation. I did not think about that as a callback, but that's very similar to what Bart did. You're absolutely right.
I feel like Homer's done the same thing already at this point, too, like grabbing a donut or something where he kept getting shocked. It's something that's very Simpsons, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They love that. Well, even going back all the way to season 1 when they just shocked each other. Apparently, electrocution is just hilarious on screen.
In the Simpsons world.
Yeah, it
Animated
really looks
form.
nice in the Simpsons yellow universe.
It's better than lava, that's for sure.
Bart is getting bored with trying to prove stupid Lisa the science queen wrong, and Milhouse comes up and declares, Bart, the bakery caught on fire and all of downtown smells like cookies. Want to go smell?
Yes. Yes, I do.
And he just leaves the phone laying on the table, still on hold with Tobias, and still racking up those very not cheap collect international calls.
This will probably end well, won't it?
I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Hey, you said it right that time.
We're going to we're going to see exactly what can go wrong. When Bart gets up in the middle of the night for a snack, he hears Tobias yelling back, "I've returned from the Coolamuggery's place. They're draining clockwise too." I love all the names and all the like funny words that they assume, which, to be fair, when we listen to Australians and, Australians in media and whatnot, a lot of times it is just like, what the hell type of word is that? There's a lot of G's in your country.
Grouse.
So
some strange fellas.
Bart has determined that he just really doesn't care about the draining anymore, so he hangs up the phone, and that is that with our communication with Australia for the episode. The rest of this episode will take place in Springfield, just like normal, I'm sure.
And poor Tobias, he was like, are we in any danger still when Bart's hanging up? It's the drainage commissioner. I mean, this is an important person calling you.
Yeah, and it was declared an emergency. I mean, he might be very, very nervous next time he has to, use the loo, so to speak. Hopefully his bidet is working. So we cut to 3 weeks later, and we see Homer on the couch, and we get one of those great Simpsons traits that we love to see, especially with Homer, where Homer is having a conversation with his brain. He's reading the phone bill, which is unusually high, and we hear him saying out loud, "Burkina Faso, disputed zone. Who called all these weird places?"
Quiet. It might be you. I can't remember.
Nah, I'm gonna ask Marge.
No. Why embarrass us both? Just write a check, and I'll release some more endorphins.
Script. I wish that we could just call for endorphins on demand. Wouldn't that be wonderful? It would cut down on my drug habits. We then flash to a scene taking place in Australia where we see a man who ends up to be Tobias's father. And we get one of the greatest lines and greatest words that is to come from this episode, as he's very outraged by the amount of the phone bill.
$900 reduce?
He immediately gets on to Tobias and asks if he's accepted a 6-hour call from the States. But Tobias does explain it was an emergency, and it was from a doctor. I mean, Dr. Bart Simpson of the Drainage Commission in Springfield needed to know. I absolutely love this Australian man's response here, because I jumped to it a little bit earlier, but his entire concern is 100% with the bidet working and being operational.
It's such a throwaway line as well, which I loved. The delivery is perfect.
Now, I will say this. I know a bidet is something that is very commonly used in other countries, but I don't know if Australia is one of them. Is this a common feature in an Australian home?
Absolutely not. In fact, I've done a little bit of traveling to Japan where I was introduced to the concept/practice, and one of my good friends is married to a Japanese woman, and he has brought a special toilet seat that does these kinds of things. And even now, if I have to use the facilities at his house, I go there with an element of regret.
You know it's coming, you just don't know when and how cold it's going to be. That's terrifying.
Yeah. You'll never get used to it unless you have grown up with it, I'm pretty sure.
They're trying to make a push for him over here to some extent with that exact same concept, or it's like a toilet seat that has a built-in bidet to it, and it's becoming very popular. I see it on, or I don't know if it's very popular, but it's definitely becoming more popular. And I see it pop up on social media all the freaking time being advertised. To be fair, we follow the Poop Culture podcast. I think you're with them as well. And I think they even had a sponsorship with those guys at one point. So it's definitely been popping up more and more.
Yeah, okay. There you are. If it's maybe it is getting around the rest of the world, I will admit to your listeners and to you two gentlemen that it's once I had enough drinks where I was not so frightened of being violated, it's not as bad as you might think.
Once you're loosened up just a bit, it feels all right.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
A little to the left. Oh, wait, I control that.
Suddenly, Paul's spending like 45 minutes in the bathroom every time he goes. It's just,
Yep. Pretty much.
This man, his name is Bruno in the script. Tobias' father is going to get to the bottom of this, and he calls the United States, specifically one Dr. Bart Simpson, who we hear answer in the middle of the night, mind you. We know there's a crazy time difference, as we'll explore later with the Simpsons traveling to Australia. But for now, we just get Bart trying to hide his voice, so he kind of plugs his nose and, hold please.
All right, but I don't.
Payroll, Bert Stanton speaking.
Oi, I said Bart Simpson. What kind of a
Bart
company
Simpson's
is this?
office.
Thank the great Lord. Look, I was just saying...
One moment, please.
Who do they think I am? Some stupid Aussie dongo? Bleeding
This
Yanks
is
out
Bart
of...
Simpson. Can I help you, ma'am?
Yeah, take it away.
No, please, I'm sorry.
No, I feel like I'm going to watch all this.
You're nailing it. You're doing it so much better than I could have.
Well, fine then. I will continue. Yeah, hey, my name is Bruno Dundridge, right? You owe me $900, mate.
No, you owe me $900.
Oi, you're just some punk kid, aren't you? Oh, you picked the wrong guy to tango with here, mate.
I don't think so. You're all the way in Australia. Hey, I think I hear a dingo eating your baby.
Which I didn't think we were supposed to joke about that anymore.
You know, that's actually a very dark case, and it's a very widely spread joke. It was huge in the 90s, but I mean, it's actually a death of an infant, Azaria Chamberlain, who died back in 1980 in a very tragic manner. But then worse, his parents went through over a decade of court ordeals where they were actually accused and convicted, in the case of the mother, of murdering this child. And it wasn't until years later that some clothing remnants were found in a dingo's nest, I guess is what it's called, or lair, or wherever dingoes live. And essentially they were able to forensically determine that the story that they gave was correct, and this baby tragically really was attacked and eaten by dingoes in the Australian outback.
Yeah, and speaking as the Australian who just laughed at that joke, it is kind of one of those things which time to some extent has made okay, but you're absolutely right. It's not okay. It's nothing funny about a baby being killed.
I still laugh at 9/11 jokes, bro. I get it. Like, yeah. I know that's terrible and that's wrong, but like when I see them, I chuckle and then I remember.
Yeah, they were exonerated, and it's awful that the parents were persecuted the way they were, given they have now proven that they weren't guilty. But at the time, with what they had, it seemed extremely dubious that a baby could be taken from parents in the manner they described. I guess they are guilty of being really negligent parents. They are not guilty of murder. And so it doesn't make it funny. It just means it's hard to buy into.
See, I watch 10,000 Things That Can Kill You from Australia all the damn time on Netflix, and it turns out that they could have just labeled it, Australia is trying to kill you. So I don't find this to be that far-fetched. Literally everything you have there, it's like, I mean, you have like snakes that they say it's like a 2-step death. Like you get bit, you have 2 steps worth of life remaining, and you're done. Like that's just, that shouldn't exist. What is the point of that creature?
There are 24 million of us, so I guess it's not quite as bad as those specials would make out. However, compared to New Zealand, this place is a death trap. That is absolutely sure.
I remember reading an autobiography from Anthony Kiedis, the lead singer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yep.
And he talked about staying in Australia for a while with Flea and all the tarantulas and how big they were. And I always thought, why does anybody want to go see that?
Yeah, we don't get tarantulas.
I'm afraid of spiders, but crap.
Yeah, we don't get tarantulas here, but we get the equivalent thereof, which are just as big, if not. Well, I don't know. The bird-eating spiders are pretty big in South America, so yeah, I think they take the cake. But yeah, we get some pretty nasty bits of wildlife here. I live on the right side of the country where less things can kill you. The other side of the country, you have funnel web spiders, and that's the shit you need to be worried about.
So when you say right, do you actually mean east, or do you mean like correct?
Correct.
Okay,
the
so
side.
where is Perth? In
the west side.
That's
of
on the
Australia.
west coast. Okay.
Yep.
So I actually got to visit Australia when I was a teenager for a pretty cool trip. I used to be like a responsible and intelligent student before I discovered that none of that matters. So at this time, I got to go on this dope trip, but we actually traveled from Cairns down to Sydney and did the entire East Coast. So it was.
You have survived one of the most dangerous legs in Australia. So if you went to Cairns and got out of there alive, you need a badge.
We stayed in like a jungle resort in
Jesus.
Cairns. Like I remember walking through the forest. There was a guy.
In the shit.
There'd be like, here, I'll wake up these ants that they're like, if they bite you, it feels like getting shot. There, let me tap, 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 and then they cover, and within seconds they cover this damn tree, and you're just like, oh, that looks like a drive-by shooting, is what we would call that in the United States.
I went to Brisbane's a fair bit south of Cairns, but I went there a good number of years ago, and that place, apart from being hot as hell and just as humid, the cockroaches and insects there. I got off the plane and I couldn't hear myself think for the insect noise. And then the cockroaches were as big as my hand, and I am 6'2", so my hands aren't small. And these things were flying around batting people in the head, and nobody cared. They were like small fucking birds.
Wow. Yeah, it's glad to. I think you've got to be a tough motherfucker to make it as long as you have in life and actually survive your entire time in Australia. And that's not to say you're old. I'm just saying you're past the average age of like 23 there.
That is correct.
That's great.
Playing with house money at this point.
Yeah, it's a free roll. You're absolutely right. So this conversation with Bart obviously did not go well for old Bruno, and he's angry about it. So angry that he's going to report this to his member of parliament. And we see him run out to the window and yell out, "Hey, Gus, I got something to report to you."
This is the best gag in the whole episode, I swear. This is great.
I love this bit here because Gus is also just upset. This is a bloody outrage, it is. I want to take this all the way to the Prime Minister. And we hear him just go down to the lake. Hey, Mr. Prime Minister, Andy.
Hey, mates, what's the good word?
Dude's just floating on an inner tube in the middle of a pond. It's fantastic. I will quickly point out that while this Prime Minister is only referred to as Andy, at the time that this episode aired, it was actually Paul Keating who is the Prime Minister of Australia until 1996.
Yeah, and there's no way Mr. Keating would have been down with being referenced in The Simpsons, I can tell you.
Oh, really? I see. I did not really look up much about the man, but definitely a little too uptight for that, huh?
Very much so. Not the. He's certainly not a Bill Clinton type who might have been okay with being taken the piss out of.
I like the idea that, he's clearly, like everyone in your country, is a descendant of criminals. So why are we going to get so uppity about it? I love that it's Jailbird or Snake, however you want to, or whatever you want to call him. But I love that that's who portrays like the original Australian immigrants.
They said they were from one of the British Isles or something too. I thought they said. So it all makes sense, is what I'm saying. Continue.
So Bart shenanigans are seemingly gathering some attention in Australia. We see that he's receiving a lot of mail all of a sudden, and we kind of get this passage of time where we see Bart's trash can just filling up with more and more and more letters from Australia until he gets to the point where he needs to use something to stuff it down in the bin. So, of course, he decides something heavy like Lisa's saxophone will do the trick.
And that's on top of a letter which says bloody urgent, which is classy Australian.
Yeah, bloody anything is always fun. What was the collection company called? I'm blanking on that, too.
No, me too.
Office of the Solicitor General?
No, Hopping Mad Collection Agency.
Oh,
and it has a kangaroo on the side of it. It's actually Lisa who, while gathering her saxophone, realizes that Bart's in trouble because along with Hopping Mad Collection Agency, Bart's gotten letters from the Solicitor General and the Office of the Prime Minister. Bart's just like, it's no big deal. Just some stupid country thinks I owe them money. But Lisa convinces him that he should probably tell his parents about that. So he does the responsible thing. Hey guys, just so you don't hear any wild rumors, I'm being indicted for fraud in Australia.
That's no reason to block the TV.
I love Homer's response here. A very strong joke and a very strong episode. But of course, in the Simpsons household, as in most American households, the TV is the centerpiece of our home.
Reign supreme.
Absolutely. And that does actually bring us to the end of our first act. We're going to go ahead and take a very quick break, and we'll be right back for Act 2 of Bart Vs Australia. Unfortunately, everyone, Paul had to go and check on his next-door neighbor, so he's not going to be available to finish up the rest of the show till next week. But we had a wonderful time getting to talk The Simpsons with our new mate Paul from the Land Down Under and the Countdown Movie and Television podcast. He's going to be back to finish out Acts 2 and 3 of Bart vs. Australia next week. In the meantime, make sure you follow our show on Twitter. It's at BestDarnDiddly. That's DIDDLY. Make sure you check out and follow the Countdown Movie and Television podcast with our guest today and next week, Paul, along with his co-host, Wayne. Again, you can follow them at the Countdown PC. And of course, follow the WizKid at theWiz_Kid23, and I'm at MrMostDaysOff. Paul, Richie, and myself will be back again next week to open a can of Vegemite and Simpsons knowledge all over the rest of Bart vs. Australia. So, come back and join us then, and until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Promo! Sushi Jackknife is a weekly show about depressed children's characters, dead soul of my mother that lives in the moon, and
And apathetic Jorge shook his head no and walked off.
Christmas Tubaman,
You've been brought here on a mission of the most high import, Tubaman.
planets of miserable slugs. So on this giant slug planet, I can't get over this idea.
Giant slug planet.
I really, there's one musical slug, just one?
Just one.
Just one?
Yeah.
And do his song for me.
And
right
he only plays it to torment the other slugs.
Super Bananas from the past. He's a super banana from the past. He's from the past. He went to the future, but he's from the past. Walmart haiku.
At last, dreams come true.
Yeah, you're right.
Bullets, hot pockets, nose spray, all in the same place.
Original games. Number 2.
Yes.
Who said it? Garrison Keillor or Lil Wayne?
Uh-huh.
A girl in a bikini is like having a loaded pistol on your coffee table. There's nothing wrong with them, but it's hard to stop thinking about it.
But that's Lil Wayne.
No, dude. It's Garrison Keillor! Sushi Jackknife is over 50 episodes strong and as binge-worthy as The Vicar of Dibley.
No one knows what that is.
You're right. I mean,
No one knows.
I mean, I know what it is. Is it necessary that people know what it is?
Well, I mean, you just referenced an obscure British sitcom that no one watched.
I mean, I watched it.
You are literally the people on the show didn't watch it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The opening was a hymn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people know about hymns.
No,
but
no one cares.
okay. Well, if you want, if it like comes around, like listen to Sushi Jackknife. We're on iTunes and Stitcher and whatever the fuck else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We exist.
It's a podcast in Nashville. That's Nathan and Justin.